requires more effort, planning, skill. Yes. Why should that be a con though if it requires more effort, planning, and skill? Planning? What? Planning? What planning does he really have? I mean, you're putting down your charges, you break the enemy shield, you shoot the motherfucker, and then dash into him. What the I don't know, brother. What the fuck is that? Gamers, what's up? Prydwen has finally put out their new tier list with Miyabi on it. They have made massive changes to this tier list, and we're gonna see if we actually agree with this tier list they've actually put out today, because they have made a lot of changes here, guys. Namely, if you just look here, first of all, DPS has been consolidated. Now, no longer do we have anomaly DPS or a standard pure DPS anymore. They're combined into one class now, as you can see here. Adding in the new meta lines, there have been changes all around the board in terms of what DPS can do in the game. I'm sorry, I just saw something. I do have a take on the DPS thing we'll talk about in a second here, but let's go ahead and look at all the changes they have done. Obviously, Miyabi's added to the list, Harumasa's been added to the list, and they've combined the pure DPS and anomaly column, which I want to talk about here. Personally, I think there should be two separate columns. Just like in Honkai Star Rail and the Honkai Star Rail tier list, there is a difference between specialist and damage dealer, right? Being a specialist doesn't mean you can't deal damage, right? But I feel like there is a niche way of dealing this damage, because Dot works in its own way in the specialist category here. Break works in its own way here. These are meant for crit-based damage dealers, or the majority of the people over here in this damage dealer category are going to be like your crit-based damage dealers, whereas I feel like that line is kind of defined here as well. I would consider the specialist characters or the anomaly characters more akin to like those dot characters or break characters or something like that, because they don't scale off of crit rate, crit damage. Sure, I guess they do overall damage, but you're looking for different things with them, right? Whereas some play off of disorder and doing damage with disorder. Some play off of just doing anomaly procs on the enemy in general, like Piper or Jane Doe or something like that, right? So I do think there should be distinct roles between the two, but let me go ahead and see here why they did it. They created the anomaly category under the pretense that it would be vastly different from attack characters, much like Grace is different than a character like Soldier 11. And apparently their roles aren't different enough. I guess if you relegate it down to, oh, they deal damage, then sure, I guess it's a good change. I mean, you're just kind of relegating down to damage. And if that were the case, they should do the same thing for here too. Like, yeah, they all do damage as well. Like, they all have different sources of getting their damage. Like, for example, like, we have Grace over here, which is good for the sub DPS. She builds up shock really nicely, right? Then we have someone like Bernice. Bernice is a sub DPS. She builds up fire really nicely. I think that Bernice and Grace are very different from the other crit based damage dealers we have in the game already. Then you have someone like Piper here, which gets her damage from building up the assault anomaly on the enemy. Like, and then Yanagi here, she really doesn't do as much shock damage, but she does do a lot more disorder damage. Her whole thing's structured around disorder. Now, obviously, this is going to be a lot different with Miyabi here, because Miyabi plays off of both anomaly and crit. I think she should be in the pure DPS category. I know she's anomaly, but I feel like the most thing she plays off of is going to be in that category, right? That's just my opinion on her. I think that she is the mesh between the two categories, rather than everyone else here being a mesh between the two. Now, obviously, other things they've had here is the meta lines, that being Apex, meta, and niche characters. That being said, now let's go ahead and hop into the tier list breakdown and talk about the first kind of problem that I have with this here. Now, I honestly don't agree with Rina being pushed up so high. I think Rina is on this level still. I don't think Rina should be pushed up this high. It's very nitpicky, I think. Like, she works great for Yanagi team, sure. She works great for a Harumasa team, sure. I mean, I guess she can work with her as well, right? But that's not BIS team. I just feel like overall she's in this category. I feel like an M6 Seth and her are very, very similar in what they're able to do for the team. So with that being said, I would personally be moving her down into tier 1 with this. I just don't think she's on the same level as Nicole and Lucy here as well. I think she should be moved down to this category, because if we're talking about the real best buffers for someone like Miyabi over here, I think Shokaku's a better buffer for her. So that means Shokaku M6 should be moved up just because she is a great support for someone like Miyabi? No. So I think this is fine going down to tier 1. Like, I think she works with Harumasa, and I think she works here, right? So I think she does sit firmly on this tier 1 level here. As far as the other ones here, guys, bro, they keep doing Ben dirty, bro. Ben Biggerton keeps keeping shit into the shadow realm. Is he really 2 whole tiers below both what Seth and Shokaku can do? I don't know. I don't ever play with them, so let me know in the comment section down below. I have genuinely no clue on that. And oh, wait, they actually did make a change here. Okay, they didn't notate it here, though, for whatever reason. I don't know why they didn't notate it here. They actually moved down Anby to this slot here. That's bro, they might be cooking with this one. They might be cooking with this one, guys. yeah, I absolutely agree with this. I think Coletta is a bit better of a breaker than what Ambi can do. So yeah, I mean, I agree with this. I think that she should be moved down here. I think there is a distinction of what both of these characters can do. I mean, Coletta is very bursty, right? I think she's a very burst heavy breaker. Like, you bring her out in the field, you do 3 attacks, boom, and then you break the enemy and you swap out and do your rotations, right? Where I feel like she has a lot more on-field time. That's what I would say anyways. I'm curious to see what the pro-con is for Ambi over here, because, I mean, that's what I feel like. Deals noticeably less stun than her S-rank counterparts. Yes, I agree with that, and she has a lot more on-field time as well. Yeah, I mean, I do agree with most of the cons she has there, so yeah, I absolutely agree with this. Everything else here, I think, for this break category is absolutely fine. I think they absolutely cooked with this one. Now, guys, I want to get into this last one here. DPS. This is the one that many people are probably going to gripe about, right? Because they have done something very serious here, right? First of all, combining both the classes together. Secondly, there is no shot. I just do not see this happening here, guys. There's just no way in my head that Soldier 11, Soldier 76 as I call her, is on the same level as Ellen. I think Ellen is just that much better than her. I think Soldier 11 is much more on par with, like, Piper here. Honestly, I feel like Piper's more consistent than Soldier 11 is. For that, I'd probably be moving her down. I just think this is cope right here. And then also making this whole new category, why this is also a pain in the ass, is because then you have to relegate Grace down here as well. And I feel like Grace on certain scenarios and certain teams pops the fuck off. Like, if you bring her in a scenario where you have lightning weak enemies, you use her and Anton on the same team together, it pops off. There is no way, shape, or form that both of these characters, there's no fucking way that he should be in tier 3. We'll talk about him in a second here. Personally, I feel like there is a gap between what these two characters can do and what she can do. I feel like Harumasa is really good, but you do need to be kind of skillful to actually get maximum damage output out of him. I'm curious to see what they put for his cons, because that's fucking ridiculous. Does significantly more damage against stunned enemies and noticeably decreases outside of that. Yes, I can agree with that. Requires more effort, planning, skill. Yes. Why should that be a con, though, if it requires more effort, planning, and skill? Like, I feel like if we're rating characters here, why does the skill level matter? Now, yes, if we're talking about consistency, I am fine with moving a character down if they have dog shit consistency or less of a consistency compared to another character. That's fine. I don't think you should take skill into account here, because you could always get your skill up to that level. Planning? What planning? What planning does he really have? I mean, you're putting down your charges, you break the enemy shield, you shoot the motherfucker, and then dash into him. What the I don't know, brother. What the fuck is that? Enemies have much shorter stun durations or resistance to being stunned, limit Harumasa's burst potential. Sure, that's fine. I think these 2 points are fine. Requiring more effort, planning, and skill, I think that's an absolute cope tape. I don't think you should judge anyone off of that, like, being their skill level, whatever the fuck it may be, right? What is her, though? Like, no standout features other than good damage output. Putting her at risk for power creep from other fire DPS. I don't think fire DPS really matters. I mean, like, I think if we're talking, honestly, if I'm talking fire DPS, I'm probably using him over her anyways. So, guys, just taking a look at this list right here, I mean, most of the enemies that are weak to fire are also going to be weak to physical as well. If they're not weak to fire, then they really have no resistances other than to electricity. So, I mean, there's one here that's weak to physical, two here, three enemies that are weak to physical, right? So there are 3 scenarios where you don't bring physical in, but then you can bring another typing in, regardless if you're on a weakness typing or not. I feel like she does much more damage in this scenario. I feel like Piper is much more consistent if we're judging her at M6 than Soldier 11 is. I just think it's kind of cope that we're putting her on the same level as this right here. Am I going to say that Piper is on the same level as them? No! So, for that reason, move Soldier 11 down to Piper's tier. I feel like Piper's more consistent. Sure, you can get good damage out with Soldier 11, don't get me wrong, and she has a scenario she works in, but overall, I feel like the consistency with Piper does put her on the same level as Soldier 11. I don't think you can put Soldier 11 on the same tier as Ellen Joe here or Harumasa here. And as for these other characters, I said this in my last Heroes video, I absolutely agree with this. I think that Julian is better than Ellen Joe. I said this back when Julian first came out. Personally, when Julian first came out, I didn't feel like she was as good as Ellen. Then we've gotten more and more and more supports into the game. We've gotten more help into the game like Chingy now. We've gotten stuff like Caesar King now that she works with. I feel like that she's gotten buffed quite a bit from that. Now, with that being said, Lighter's been added to the game as well, which also is going to be buffing Ellen Joe. Does that make her better? I still don't think so. I still think Julian is great, the burst type DPS. So yes, I do feel like that Julian is a bit better than what Ellen Joe is. Now, another take I have here. This is going to be a very, very cope one though, I think. So guys, overall, I do feel like there is a difference in what these guys can do to what she can do. So what I would be doing here, if we're talking about pure damage output, I would say there needs to be a tier 4 down here, guys. And I would realistically just move everyone down a tier to kind of make room for this, right? Like, I think I would move all of these down here. I think that she is still in that meta category, so I'd probably move this meta line down is here as well, and then still have the niche character on their same line here. But I do feel like there's a gap between what these characters can do compared to these characters. If we're talking pure DPS now, because I don't feel like Bernice's damage is up to snuff with what both Yanagi and what Jane Doe is going to be able to do. So I'd probably be getting both Bernice and Juyan and putting them in this tier right here, this new tier 1 right here. Because I do feel like there is a diff in what they can do compared to what Ellen Joe and Harumasa can do. But they do still sit in that meta category for me because they can all still clear the content very well. I think Piper can still clear the content all pretty well. I cleared all the content with her this patch. So, I mean, like, for me, that's where they would namely sit at. I do feel like there is a gap between what these characters can do and what Miyabi can do. So that's fine that they have a different gap between them. But there is a gap between what Juyan and Bernice can do compared to what Jane Doe and Yanagi can do. So for that, I would be moving them down a tier. I'd be moving everyone else down a tier. And as for the last one here, the one that I'm going to cope out of the most here, move these two characters down. I'm fine with these two getting moved down to tier 4. Actually, I'm probably fine with him staying in the same tier as these two characters here, because when running them on the team together, it works so good. It works super, super good. And I do think that they should deserve to be on the same tier together. Overall, guys, I think this list is somewhat copium. I feel like what they have at the very, very top of these lists are kind of accurate to like what the current meta and game state is. But overall, guys, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about this list? Do you think I'm copium? Do you think they're copium? I think they're kind of copium on this. Is it their worst tier list yet? Probably not. Is it their best tier list? Absolutely not, because there's still a lot of changes to be made. They did a lot of massive changes. Some I agree with, some I don't. Meta line's fine. Merging two different DPS types together, I don't know about that one, Chief. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed. Piper build guide will be out very, very soon, gamers, so subscribe if you haven't already. That's gonna do it for me. See you guys later. Bye bye.